Welcome back. You're watching Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. Joining me across Kuala Lumpur right now is Lim Wei Jiet, a very handsome chap, well versed in the rule of law, I suppose. Very recently, Wei Jiet and Amiga penned or co-penned a particular op-ed that talks about some of the legislative measures that can be introduced by the government to keep pace with the fiscal policies that is currently being rolled out by the government. And earlier on, just now, we were talking about some laws that could be introduced to protect individuals. Right now, we want to talk a little bit more about some laws that can protect businesses. Wei Jiet, let's go through the 2 or 3 suggestions that you spoke about in your op-ed when we talk about laws that can be introduced to protect businesses in light of COVID-19 pandemic.
Right. I think one of the points which I noted was to increase the monetary threshold for the winding up of companies. So currently, the monetary threshold is 10,000 ringgit under the Companies Act. We propose to increase it to any other higher figure, depending on Parliament's wisdom. We can look at how Singapore has done it. They have increased it by tenfold, from 10,000 Singapore dollars to 100,000 Singapore dollars. So this provides some kind of temporary legal barrier for companies against the very irreversible consequences of being wound up, and the termination of employees which may follow the winding up. So companies are already facing a very difficult period of time that we need to increase that threshold so that the creditors, it's not very easy for them to, force a company to be wound up. The government has already extended the time period to respond to a notice of winding up, 21 days, 6 months. What we propose is to complement that, but to increase it to a higher figure above 10,000 ringgit. I think the other things that we can explore is also, for example, to allow the conduct of certain meetings of companies, such as AGMs, to accommodate virtual hearings instead of requiring directors and shareholders to attend a physical meeting. We can also provide a temporary relief from inability to perform contractual obligations. So in this difficult time, your suppliers may not be able to perform their part of the bargain in certain commercial contracts. So those suppliers should be shielded for a temporary period of up to 6 months, for example, from being sued for contractual breach. And this is what Singapore has also done, and it's something which can be replicated here in Malaysia. Basically, you want to protect the business community from litigation and lawsuits, which really takes up a lot of time and energy and resource. I know I shouldn't say this as a litigator and as a lawyer.
It's crazy, because then you lose your source of income yourself.
Well, for the greater good, I believe that we really need to ensure
Lawyers aren't known to be millionaires, I put it that way. But no, I see your point. But when we talk about giving opportunities for or protecting companies from being sued and perhaps thinking of increasing their threshold, and this gets them out of the courtroom and perhaps allows them to make more money out there. It also talks about the need for government doing a little bit more for companies. My question to you is, don't you think that there's a lot of things that the government is already doing for businesses as we speak? And what you're trying to suggest here is also giving them more assistance. Do you think that the government is okay in this regard? They should help the people more and less of the businesses?
Well, my legislative proposals doesn't require the government really to fork out any additional money from the budget that it already has. So I don't see why the government would have objections to this kind of scenarios. And the businesses that I'm looking to protect are mostly the SMEs, and they are not the large corporations which probably don't need as much assistance out there. So these are the kopitiam owners, the SMEs, those who have 50 or below employees. Those are the companies which I'm more concerned, which are facing the greater risk and threat of being wound up, of being sued for breach of contract, and the necessity to hire lawyers and to go to court. So those are the kind of target that I'm trying to look out for in these kind of proposals.
Wei Jiet, there is something that you wrote about which is highly interesting for me to actually talk about, which is of course talking about the targeted subsidies for employees that the government is currently giving the employers money to do so. So currently the government is giving 1,200 and it's about 3 months. Your argument is, while this is okay to be done, it's not enough for the long run. You argue that it has to be done a little bit longer, 6 months maybe longer. But what I want to talk more is on the stratified approach that you talk about. More targeted government subsidizing of workers' salaries. These values should be stratified according to industries, whereby the harder hit ones like tourism, F&B, aviation should receive or will receive a larger sum than others. I agree with you 100%, because very recently I interviewed the Hotel Association. 50,000 people is going to be out of job. Malaysia Airlines, AirAsia and all the other airlines in the country and around the world actually will lose their job. Do you think that more should be done in terms of this particular industries? And if doing so, do you think that other industries will cry foul and say, hey, what about us? We need help, we need more handouts as well?
I think we really need to adopt a stratified approach. You can't have the same subsidies and benefits for glove makers and pharmaceutical companies as compared to those in the tourism, the hotel industry, the aviation industry, which are hit much harder compared to the earlier companies which I'm talking about. And Singapore has adopted this kind of stratified approach. They have acknowledged that the tourism, F&B and aviation and certain identified industries will suffer much more than others. So you need to give them higher subsidies, and that is what Singapore has done. And I believe that companies in Malaysia, I mean, we are all facing the same problem, but I believe that we are compassionate and kind enough to acknowledge that other business owners out there are suffering much more than us, and I don't think people will complain if the government helps these kind of business owners more in the long run.
See, right now I agree with you and you agree with me. The question now is on the execution of it, and at the risk of us talking in an echo chamber where we both continue to agree with each other, let's talk about the implementation. If this thing needs to be done, not just the entire gamut of the proposals that you're suggesting, but at least in this stratified approach where some industries should be looked at more than others, how do you think this can be efficiently rolled out when the parliament isn't even sitting? Do you think that there is a way for us to execute some policies given the current scenario or the current quandary that we're in right now in this country?
Well, the government has already implemented supply bills to enforce this kind of wage subsidies already as we speak. So what I'm merely advocating is to adopt a stratified approach. Perhaps they need to table another supplementary supply bill, and perhaps they should really go to Parliament to get that supplementary supply bill to be passed. But my point is, it means so far as financial injection is concerned, some may argue that the government is able to do that. But obviously, the better way and the best way is to go to Parliament and to pass a supplementary bill to make sure that you are transparent in where you get the money from, and to ensure that that policy is being debated and refined and reaches the right people through opposition and backbencher feedback. So that is the optimal way of doing things. But even if we want to disregard that, I believe that the government really needs to be a bit more creative and flexible and strategic in the way that it distributes and allocates money to businesses.
Yeah, I mean, optimal is that we have 365 days of parliamentary sitting. If everybody has to work 365 days, how come MPs only work? I don't know how many days they're going to work this year. But anyway, the issue here is that things are not optimal and we have to make do with what we have. Do you think, again, that these kind of measures can be bulldozed by the MOF, for instance? Just, the stroke of a pen of the Minister of Finance and off you go. Do you think that that is legal when we talk about, say, stratified approach on subsidies, wages and stuff like that?
Well, my opinion is that all this kind of supplementary financial packages really need to go through Parliament to be approved before they are implemented. And the reason is this: we need opposition feedback. We need this kind of financial stimulus packages to be debated and to be improved. So we cannot assume that what the minister is doing is 100% foolproof and it's the best for the economy. We need feedback from those from members of Parliament, and we need to go through the parliamentary process. And that is something that is envisioned in our constitution and in any parliamentary democracy. You need to go back to Parliament. It's not the government's piggy bank to pick on whenever the government feels like it. there is a process that needs to go through under the Constitution, and the government must comply with that particular process.
Right, fantastic. That was the conversation that I had with Lim Wei Jiet. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astronomy.com, look for Notepad over there. Remember, you can also read at length the piece that they did, Ambiga as well as Wei Jiet. Just search for, let me just see, where is it on again, all these op-ed, Wei Jiet?
Malay Mail.
Malay Mail, there you go. Protecting the people and businesses, emergency legislative and policy proposal. You guys, lawyers, really need to concise your titles, my God. Emergency legislative and policy proposals, Ambiga, Srinivasan, as well as Lim Wei Jiet. Good luck Googling that. That's it from me for this particular episode. Until next time, thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.